This is Joelle.
I was like, that's Joanne.
Here's Joanne. Joelle Murchison. And her mother, Jean, read the script a little earlier, and we thank you for that as well. Joelle, we wanted to kind of conclude with I wanted to have a conversation with you just for a few minutes and talk about what do you see out there? You know, the church being 200 years old and having this important history in the life of the city of Hartford, I dare say in the life of this nation. And here we are at this kind of juncture in American history with all that we see. What do you see out there right now? What do you see?
Well, one of the things that, for me, having now been a resident of Connecticut for almost 23 years and a member of Faith for almost that entire time, the really rich history that we as Black people have here in Hartford, and certainly within Faith Congregational Church, the thing I'm most sad about, however, is how few people know that. And that we are still, even today, fighting for legislation that would allow African American studies to be taught in our school system. When I think back to my own growing up in a Black UCC church in New York, that was the root of where I learned all of the history about who I was, not simply as a young girl, but as a descendant of greatness. The history that we learned in church was all that I had to stand on because we did not learn that in school. And still today, 40-something years later, the same holds true. So I think one of the challenges is that we need to tell this story, and we need to find new ways to ensure that our young people can embrace it and take it to heart as it relates to what they have to offer, what they have to give. We're still in a fight. As Mrs. Camp said, racism looks the same. It may look a little bit different, but it is the same. It endures. And how do we help our young people to navigate in the case of that? I think we really have to find ways to tell this story and make this history come alive, or we are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that in the DNA of this church is justice, as has been said. In the DNA of this church is a sense of being with the other, a sense that it is not just about us, but it is about all of us. And in some ways, that's kind of rare in churches today. I think, and particularly in Black churches, we do a lot of navel gazing, but I think we do look out in the church, and I'm pleased about that and happy that that's part of who we are. I also think that we don't celebrate the good that we do enough. We really do have to figure out how to do that even better. This occasion of the 200th anniversary has really challenged us to try to figure out ways to say it more clearly, to be about what we'd like to be in the future, to try to talk about that in some new and different ways. That's why we have tried to figure out a conversation around sanctuary. There was a moment where we were asked whether or not we would open our doors to a person that needed sanctuary, and I was pleased because I asked the committees and the structure of the church, and everyone said yes. It meant yes, that we are thinking about justice, and we're thinking about the way that our history has informed us is that justice was at the heart of who we were. You know, when we do community conversations in our town, when we have candidates meetings, when we do talk about education at the church and invite the community in to be a part of that, it's all about not just us, but our community as well, as we want to be a part of it. So yeah, we're we're one of the best kept secrets in town, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very proud to be a member of Faith because it really has stood out as a beacon in this community when there are issues that come to bear, whether or not they are directly connected to a member of the congregation or not. We have opened our doors time and time again to invite the community in to a safe space to have some of the conversations that are very difficult for us to have in this community. And particularly in this climate that we're living in right now, it couldn't possibly be any more polarized than it is. We've been able to find space to bring together those parties across the city, across the state, who may be challenged to think about whether or not it's fair or right or just for that community to exist. And that's critically important. When we look at our history has borne that to be the case. There's so many firsts in our legacy. And so we really are called to be a people of justice, a people who are willing to allow for dialogue, who are willing to have those difficult conversations and be willing to have, some uncomfortable moments when they come. And that's sort of the story that we tell, that time and time again, no matter what befell us, we came back even stronger. And I think that's one of the things as you talk about churches, 11 o'clock, the most segregated hour in America still today. How do we find a way to bridge the gap across our racial and identity and gender and disability and all of the other things that keep us apart? How do we find ways to, in spite of our differences and the God that we serve, to come together and have dialogue, to find ways to learn more about one another rather than simply to take a stand on one end or the other? We've got to be a model to demonstrate that, not only to the community at large, but absolutely our children, as we talked about before.
Yeah, and we've tried to rekindle a lot of old relationships too, I think. We have earlier this year, as part of really kicking off our 200th anniversary celebration, we had a moment with Emmanuel Church, who came out of, as we did, Center Church. They were on the first floor, we were up in the balcony, but there was this history that we had together, and we came together, we think the first time in 200 years for worship. And it was an amazing moment because we all knew, all three congregations, that this was a moment where we were marking something, marking that we were going to live into something different. And so I'm encouraged by what I see, but I'm also, lots of folks don't want to hear the message of justice very much these days.
That is true. But I think we have to find new ways to communicate. I mean, I think one of the challenges of celebrating our history is sometimes we get too caught up in what was and don't think enough about what can be. And we hold ourselves back when we are constrained to do what we've always done, as opposed to find new ways to answer the call of the future. And I think that is what has changed the dynamics of our communities, the way that churches and other houses of faith operate, the way that our school systems and other systems operate, is we simply have not been able to be amenable to the way society and the demands of things have changed. Ms. Camp also mentioned, going to the library and not, having phones and devices, and that is the way of all of our young people today. So how do we reach them in that way? How do we tell that story? How do we allow for folks to understand the critical importance of embracing justice for all and not just for some of us? But we have to be willing to be stretched, and we have to be willing to step out and find new ways to advance in the future. We will not, as they say, you will not get there the same way you got here. And we have to embrace that and not be fearful of letting go of what we know so tightly, holding on so tightly to what we know, but really stepping forward in faith into what comes.
Yeah, I've been very privileged to serve as pastor of Faith Congregational Church. I grew up in the church, for those that don't know. And a lot of the people, well, say the ones that lived 200 years ago, I knew And, and they were part of my growing and my upbringing and shaping me into part of who I am today. And so I went away. I left Hartford and I told God and some white folks I wasn't never coming back, but I did. and came back because felt a very strong call to give back to a community that was very nurturing to me and very helpful in my travel in life. And that's what we need to do with our young people, is to instill that sense of belonging, that sense of that they can do amazing things and good things with their lives. And I think that's part of that DNA thing that we have to instill in our young people. And it stretches not just in the congregation, but our tentacles have to be outside the walls of the church as well. And I think we're trying to do that, and I think there are other churches that are trying to do that as well, and other communities of faith. But it is a big challenge today because the messages that we hear over the airwaves and other places are often very negative, and it's an uphill and very difficult struggle to maintain some sense that, especially for our young people, but also for us as adults, to stay in this struggle, to stay firm in what we know we need to be doing with our lives at this point in our history. And so I'm encouraged. The voices that you have heard today, save two or three of the voices that were before you today, were members of faith. We wanted you to hear from the members of faith as they talked about, you included, and talked about who we are, what we are about. It's not about any one of us. It's about all of us sharing together. And so this has been an important moment. Do you have any concluding thought that you
I would
wanna
just
share?
say, as I look over at the photos over there, most of them are male, but there are, of course, I have to call out, I believe, next to Chief Stewart is Geraldine Jones.
Yeah.
And we did also talk about, and I actually never met her, but I feel fortunate that in the short period of time of my life that I have been here, that not only all of those, except for Reverend Pennington, did I have the opportunity to meet, to talk with, including Trudy Merrill and others, and those who were in this room, who have been role models to me and who demonstrated to me as a transplant to Hartford that there was something worth being here to do, and who embraced and welcomed me and my family into this community, and Hartford feels like home. And so my commitment to this new home is to make sure that we continue our learning, that we continue to grow and share as a community, regardless of what church you belong to, but knowing that we feel committed as members of Faith Congregational Church to carry forth our history and what I believe is our mantle around social justice. And so I would invite all of you not only to join us on Sunday, certainly, but to join us in the struggle. If there are moments in time where there are issues that are available for us all to wrestle with and to address, that we come together as community, and that I think faith will always be a place that we can come to have those difficult conversations. So that's what I would say, is that I'm proud to be a part of this legacy, and I know that there is more that we are expected to and accountable to do.
Well, thank you, Joelle. Let me just, before we close this, we want to give a little time for you to talk with each other and to be together in community here today. But let me thank all of those who have been participants in this program today. Didn't they do a great job? I think they did. One, and Chief Teal, I got to especially call out to you because he knew 5 minutes before he was going to do what he did, and he did what he did with skill, and we appreciate your service as well. Also want to say a word of thanks to the library and the History Center. I misspoke when I said that Bridget was with the History Center. She is that, but she is also the executive of the library, and so we need to correct that as well. But we thank them for this space and this time. I also wanted to thank a couple of people very quickly. One is Jasmine. Jasmine, will you come up here just for a minute? We have a gift for you. Jasmine has worked tirelessly, and we have a gift for you. We love you, and we thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. A quick story. We got to talking at the last meeting, and I found out I knew her dad like 30 years ago. And he's a preacher, and we did work together in the National Church, and I got his number, and I invited him to come here and preach in July. So he's going to come. So that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun. And the second person I wanted to recognize and say a big thank you, her work is not done yet, don't run away, is we got some other things we're planning to do as well. But Brenda Miller, where is Brenda? Oh, go find Brenda. Huh?
Her dad is in the hospital.
Oh, so sorry to hear that. Her dad is not well. But she has been also very much with us in this journey, in helping to make sure that this day came off as well as it did. I see Sally Whipple here from the old State House, who has been around our table. We have been really blessed to have a table of people in a cross-section of leaders in the city who have come together to help us to celebrate the 200th anniversary in grand style. And so we are just thankful for all of them. I see some of them here that are present with us. I have to shout out my colleague, Carrie Nicewonder from Emmanuel Church is here. But you have to give these flowers to Brenda, all right, and say thank you. Now we're hoping that what you will do is to rise and greet each other in a spirit of togetherness in this place. Thank you for being here today. Yes. Barbara Wiggins has a member of Faith who has been very much a part of all of it. And Wayne Dixon for his help. Thank you, thank you, thank you.